Hear that? That's the sound of a patient whose health data is protected from a cyber attack. And that's the sound of a financial system that's digitally secured from bad actors. Right now, there's an invisible war being fought on a digital battlefield that impacts what we do every day. That's why at Peraton, we do the can't be done to help protect the vital systems we rely on. Because if we don't, the alternative is unimaginable. Peraton.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Direct-to-Video Connoisseur. As always, this is Matt here, and I am joined once again by Jacob Gustafson, who last time you were on it was we were talking about Awful Awesome Action Part or Volume 1, but now you've got two books out in that period of time, Awful Awesome Horror Volume 1 and Awful Awesome Sci-Fi, which we'll be talking about today. Welcome back, Jacob.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. So when we were first here, you kind of talked about sort of how you got into these kind of movies with the action one. So I do recommend for people if you go back through the archives when we talked about Man Killers, that was when we talked about your first book. And so as I was joking before we got on that I meant to have you on in the fall to talk about your horror one, and didn't get a chance. And now you've got a sci-fi one out as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, the book is Awful Awesome Horror and Awful Awesome Sci-Fi, and that's really the one that we're going to be talking about. And that one just came out in February of 2021, and then I had the horror book out in August of 2020. So yeah, I mean, it's just sort of been I just somehow have been able to get them done very quickly. And in fact, I'm working on Awful Awesome Horror Volume 2 right now. A friend of mine is editing it. So I originally, I mean, gosh, going all the way back when I was just a, junior high student, I discovered Mystery Science Theater 3000 and just had a ball watching it. And then as I got older, I started kind of discovering strange and very cheesy and hilariously fun and over the top movies. But it wasn't really until I got into college and realized that I went to film school, and I realized that the other people that I was in school with, they had never seen any of these types of movies. And I thought, my gosh, really? You haven't seen any of this stuff? Okay. So we started watching them when I was in college, and then I moved to a new town and didn't know anybody. And I thought, well, the best way to meet people that would be fun would be through movies, because movies are just like a real centerpiece of my life. And I thought, I love watching these low budget, off the wall, fun movies to watch with people. I mean, these are generally the type of flicks that are hard to watch by yourself, or at least they're more fun watching them with someone else. And so I set up a weekly movie gathering in my local coffee shop, just showing all kinds of craziness like Samurai Cop and Miami Connection and Road to Revenge and Deadly Prey. And I also showed Man Killers. That was another one that we watched. And it simply is a way to meet people, because nothing else was going on in my town. The town that I live in only has 40,000 people. It's a small town. And it worked. I was able to meet a whole bunch of different people, and we had a ball, and they became my friends. And so somewhere in there, I suddenly decided, nobody writes about these movies, or if they do, it's not in one handy book. Like, it'll be like a random movie thrown into a book about action movies, for instance, and maybe it'll be spoken about derisively. But in my opinion, you should go out and watch a movie like Samurai Cop or like the movie tonight, CyberTracker. You should watch it. They're fun, and there's a lot to be enjoyed with them. And so I thought, well, I think I'll do that. I think I'll write a book for people to discover all these, for people like me who enjoy watching movies. Maybe they like watching riff tracks, or they like Mystery Science Theater or whatever, and they want to watch these movies. But the problem is of course it's a minefield, right? Like there's all kinds that are like boring and terrible and just like a complete waste of time. And so my books I don't shy away from those ones. Those are included in my book too as cautionary films that I think you'll probably run across if you start digging into this genre, whatever you want to call it. You're probably going to run across these, and they should be avoided. So those are in my books too. And it was actually my wife's idea. I was going to put out like one big book, and she said, you should just separate it by genre and like put them out when you can and make them lesser expensive, more affordable, and then it's not like a Herculean task to do this one thing and it'll take you half your life to do it. You can just kind of put these out regularly when you have time, and it's worked out so far. I've got the 3 published. I've got Awful Awesome, and that's what I call them. These so bad they're good type movies. I think that's a clumsy title. I like Awful Awesome better because they're awful, but they're also awesome. Like they're both. A movie can be both. And so the whole point of the books is to not to discourage these types of films. I don't stand on the sidelines saying, "Ooh, look at this movie. These people who made it are dumb." Like that's not the tone. The tone is like, yeah, okay, there's obvious things where they miss the mark, and that's what makes it fun, and you should watch them. The whole point is that it makes for a more interactive experience with your friends. And I mean, I've been able to like get other people to come over to my house. Like, for instance, my children will make friends with somebody, and then I'll meet their parents, and then turns out, their dad might be interested, and then he comes over and is like, "Oh my gosh, that was so much fun. When's the next one?" So, so it's actually helped me expand my social circle as well, because I mean, I think you and I can definitely agree that films are unifying. They bring people from all different walks of life together. You know, lots of different people like, a movie like The Terminator or like Aliens or whatever. You don't have to be one type of a person or another. You can be any age. You can have any kind of political background and really, really love movies. And so I feel like they're a unifier, and these movies in particular are, because you're not inviting your friends over to come sit and be quiet. All right, shut up. We're going to sit down, shut up. We're going to watch a movie. It's like, no, man, we're going to talk about it. We're going to discuss it. And it becomes much more of like a bonding experience too. So that's really the intent of the books.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I think is really good about your books too, and I think your wife's idea actually is really good. I like the fact that you're breaking it up into these smaller volumes, but I also think one thing for people out there that are always kind of deciding, like, okay, what should I buy? What should I, add to my collection or whatever? I think these books that you put out, they're like additions to people's, action film collection or horror film or and most people I know who do collect, they usually collect across the different genres when it comes to sort of direct to video stuff. And someone definitely, I wouldn't tell someone not to read one of your books cover to cover. It definitely can be read cover to cover, but it also can be, for people who are busy, who've got, kind of crazy lives, they can buy your book and be like, okay, I'm going through Tubi or Prime or whatever, and look at all of this stuff that's here on Tubi or Prime. And, some of this stuff looks really good based on the cover, but I don't know. And they can look at your review and at least get a synopsis of it. So even if they, even if you weren't a fan of it, they can read it and be like, even if you wasn't a fan of this, I kind of think this would be fun for me. And so it's like, I think it's a really good reference guide. And I found myself with your first one, with the action one, kind of like I'd started kind of reading it cover to cover, and then I kind of just put it down and was going to go back to it. And then I realized, I was like, oh, I'm going to watch a movie on Tubi. Let's see if Jacob covered this in his book, just to see, because it was one I hadn't seen yet. And I think it's a really great resource in that sense. I think it's a great addition for people to have in their collections. People like to get these, Blu-rays from like Vinegar Syndrome or, MVD or Arrow or something like that. This is the kind of thing I always try to, tell people, when it comes to books like these, they're a similar type of addition to have into the collection. And I think it's a really great resource for people to have for sure.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, how about Tubi? I mean, Tubi is amazing. I wasn't even aware of Tubi until like I don't know, like a year ago or maybe 2 years ago, and it has totally blown up as being like the place to look for forgotten cinema that has been totally discarded, that might not even have a physical release. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, Amazon as well, but Tubi, I feel like there's kind of a shift over to Tubi. Like I'm finding more and more interesting stuff I have never heard of. And I mean, you've seen what I've written about. Like I've turned over a lot of stones. I have dug deep, and there is so many even deeper cuts available on Tubi. It's crazy. So that's been like an amazing resource, and I wish when I had started this process that it had been available, because I mean, my gosh, so many of the movies on Tubi are like full HD, they're uncut, they're beautiful, pristine, and here I'm trying to like track down like some grotty VHS dub that's like floating around somewhere that it looks awful, but I still want to watch it. And, here we are a few years later, and now I can watch a beautiful restored version of it. I mean, we're definitely living in quite a wonderful time. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I would say that my guides are helpful in that, because there's just so much out there. And I mean, here I am. Each book has over 100 reviews in them. So I've published over 300 reviews. I'm working on my fourth right now. I definitely am going to have enough content to publish 2 volumes of each. And like I feel like to a degree I've only scratched the surface. Like I could keep writing these for years, because there's such a wealth of stuff out there that has been totally missed, ignored, neglected. I think it's a very exciting time for cult movie fans, and because of wonderful labels like Vinegar Syndrome and, like you said, like MVD and Arrow, and Cauldron is a new one that I've been keeping an eye on. And there seems to be new boutique labels popping up left and right, that are putting out like amazing stuff. Massacre Video, and there's so many that are I mean, really what they're doing is they're curating, right? Like
Right.
there's stuff that they have access to, and AGFA as well. Like they're all kind of getting their own identity, their own flavor. And people who are into Vinegar Syndrome are like, they're totally dedicated.
Yeah.
Like they'll buy everything that they put out, because they're catering to a very specific taste. And if that's your taste, then you're going to want to have everything that Vinegar Syndrome puts out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because Action USA came out with Vinegar Syndrome recently, and I missed it. Right, I didn't get a chance to get it, and then I get promotional. I get the ability sometimes to get promotional copies of things, and
Sure.
MVD is putting out Action USA, and so I was like, oh, so I'm waiting in the mail for my promotional version of Action USA, which the promotional ones aren't as cool, because you just get like a clear plastic DVD container with the DVDs just kind of stuck in, as opposed to like the really cool like VHS design cover.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so you don't get all the bells and whistles, but I'm kind of excited for that to come. But it's interesting as well that you're even getting in this situation where like Vinegar Syndrome puts out theirs, and MVD's putting out theirs, or Arrow, and
Yeah, I noticed that too. I thought that was really strange. I was like, but it just came out on Vincent, but then I was told, well, but that was a limited release, and that was 4K, and they only were going to do the one run, and that's it. I mean, the fact that something like Action USA is available, like, let alone on any home media format, let alone like a 4K Blu-ray from Vinegar Syndrome,
yeah,
blows my mind. I mean, I love Action USA. I love Action USA. That movie is so much fun. It's incredible. It's so good. But it's one of those movies that I figured, yeah, but because it's action, no one's gonna put it out. No one's ever gonna put that out, and yet there it is. I wish someone would put out Parole Violators. I really, really want to see a nice, pristine version of Parole Violators. That's one. And the Road to Revenge is another one that I would love to see a re-release with like an interview with John DeHart. And there's some wonderful films that are just dying to be re-released and given the premium treatment that something like Samurai Cop and Miami Connection have had for many years. It would be wonderful to get more of those releases. I just saw that Severin was going to put out uh oh man, what's the with Red Brand Strike Commando. They're gonna put out Strike Commando, which is incredible. That movie's so amazing. Like the whole like him talking about Disneyland and like the Amerikanski and like it's just oh my god, that was one of the best movies I watched with my friends. And again, I watched like some crappy like Japanese laser disc rip that was like awful and washed out, and it had like the kanji at the bottom and like, but now we're going to get a pristine, beautiful version. And I'm sure it'll probably have like an interview with Red Brown or somebody. It's a wonderful time. And I'm glad that action is finally getting its due. Horror has been in the spotlight for, seems like ever since DVD became a thing. It was all about horror. Action has always gotten short shrift when it's come to the premium treatment, and I'm so glad to see that it's finally happening.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned about the Strike Commanders because Simon Miller of Explosive Action, he actually had like a VHS of a Japanese VHS of those movies, and he made DVD rips for me and sent them over. So those are the copies that I had. And then he saw the ad from Severin recently, and he was letting me know because I guess not a lot of people have reviewed Strike Commando 2, so they pulled a quote from my review of Strike Commando 2 because it's
no kidding.
Yeah,
I've never seen. I never, for whatever reason, I never jumped into it. I can't. Yeah. Strike Commando 2, is it Bruno Mattei? I can't remember who directed that one.
And it's Brent Huff instead of Red Brown in the lead part.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's why I never jumped in. It seems like I would have by now. I mean, my God, Strike Commando is so good. Oh my God.
It's not anywhere near that level of good as the first one.
Okay. I mean, Strike Commando is like, isn't Strike Commando like almost 2 hours long? Like it's really long, it has that tacked on ending that's like, you keep thinking the movie's over and it's like, wait, it's still going. What's going to happen? And then it's just, oh God, the ending's so good, man. So good. So I'm just very happy. And much like you, I mean, my hope is to present the world with a kind of a guide of these are the movies you want to watch if you're looking for this purpose, right? It's a very, very niche purpose, and that's to watch it with friends and like goof off and have fun and have a big good chuckle. But there's definitely people out there who that's exactly what they want. That's exactly what they want to do, and it's so hard because again, like I said, it's a minefield. I mean, good Lord, look at Prime, look at Tubi. It's like, ooh, I don't know. This could be a 90-minute time waste. This may be awful or it might be super fun, and I've watched a lot of really bad ones. Speaking of which, and this is a little bit off topic, have you seen The Bouncer on Tubi?
That's the Van Damme film.
Yes,
I have. Yes, yeah. What's that? It's in French, right? It was made in Belgium. I remember.
Yeah. I just watched it. I just watched it last night because I was looking for something to watch, and my wife likes Jean-Claude Van Damme, and we had actually gotten our fingers burned recently with watching a couple of his films. That, I mean, he's one of those guys that I was a really big fan of, and somehow I missed like a bunch of his movies. I don't know how it happened, but I did, and so I've been kind of playing catch up, and so I tried to watch. I watched The Hardcore, which was just that one is almost 2 hours, and it's really bad. Like it's not fun. And then there was another one. shoot, I keep wanting to call it Wake and Fright, but that's a different movie. Anyway,
Wake of Death.
yeah, that was the one.
Yes.
I didn't even
Yeah.
finish that one. I was just
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, I don't care. But The Bouncer is like, it's way good. Like, it's exactly what Van Damme, again, this is far afield, but I just wanted to talk to you about it because you're a fellow action fanatic. And it's like, dude, this is what Van Damme should be doing. He should not be doing stuff like the hardcore. He should be doing stuff like The Bouncer. Like, he's reached this age, or this point in his career where he doesn't need to talk a lot, and he just has like a real grizzled look. He's like reached like the Charles Bronson
Right.
age, where he can just like look at the camera, and like that's enough. I don't know. I really liked it. I thought it was way better than the vast majority of the stuff that he's done in the last like 5 years or so.
Yeah, I was a really big fan of that one as well. And it was a mature film, I think, for him. And I think he, like when you watch Seagal's stuff now, it's almost like he's still trying to do 90s Seagal in 2010s, and it just doesn't come off well. Whereas Van Damme, somewhere along the line, maybe it was when he did JCVD in 2010 or something, but he has sort of changed. I mean, some of the newer stuff, it's like a bit like he did that 1 pound of flesh that went really long, and it was just kind of but it still had like some really good stuff in it. But The Bouncer, I think, was like really a mature film where I don't think Van Damme of 10 years ago would have even felt comfortable playing that part, where he kind of, it's not like he's just going around just beating the crap out of people all over the place. It's like, yeah, it was a more mature film. I agree with you. I think, and it does feel like he's doing more of that kind of movie. So maybe he did kind of hit a turning point in his career.
I hope so. I mean, I've always liked Jean-Claude Van Damme. I mean, of all the action stars, other than Arnold, I think Jean-Claude is probably my number two, which is why it's so bizarre that as an adult, like later in life, I went back and realized, oh my gosh, I missed so many of his movies. I guess my video store didn't have them or something. So, and then he's just been pumping out movies left and right. Him and Scott Adkins. I'm totally caught up on Scott Adkins. I think I've seen just about everything that Scott Adkins has done except for Max Cloud. I think that's the only one that I haven't seen.
I started Max Cloud. I'm about halfway through it. I got it through Hoopla. So I don't know if you've used Hoopla before as a streaming service.
I do.
Yeah.
I actually use it for comic books, but yeah.
Yeah. Max Cloud is on. At least it's on in my area. I don't know if it changes regionally for what's available on Hoopla, but yeah. I probably should say for people that are outside the United States, because I think people outside the U.S. don't get Tubi due to copyright issues, and I don't know if there's Hoopla or an equivalent, but just to give people an idea of what Hoopla is, it's a streaming service that works with your local library to allow you to just take things, whether they're books, like you said, comic books, movies, I think even CDs or music that's on there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and you can just stream them for a period of time. But yeah, so I think it might be the same throughout the country, but Max Cloud was on there for Hoopla, so that's how I started watching it.
Well, I'll have to check that out because I like Scott Adkins. I mean, even his movies that are like lower tier are generally still fun.
Yeah.
Like they're usually lean, they get the job done. He knows exactly what he's making, and they're usually pretty dang satisfying. Although I did watch one. Oh, what was it? I think it's Legacy of Lies. No,
I
that's
haven't seen that one yet, but I've heard mixed things about that one. That one's on Tubi as well.
That one was okay. No, I'm thinking of a different one. Dead Reckoning. That's the one
Okay.
I'm thinking of. Dead Reckoning is ridiculous. It's almost like it's I actually reviewed it for the next book, for probably like the third action book, because it is like it's a hair's breadth away, in my opinion, to something like The Room, because it is just it is ridiculous. At one point he wears a wig, and I was like, I desperately wanted him to wear the wig throughout the whole movie because it is in no way believable. It's like this big curly wig, and it looks ridiculous. And but yeah, it's not good. But if you go into it knowing it's not gonna be good, and that it's just like, wow, this is not well written. Also, the script feels like it was written at least a decade ago because they make a ton of references to 9/11 like it just happened. And it's like, this movie came out in 2021. It's been 20 years. Like, it's not a recent thing. That was a long. I mean,
Yeah.
it's still definitely obviously relevant, but it's just the way that they reference it, that they use terminology and references that would make you think like, wait a minute, but that you're making it sound like it happened like last year. It didn't happen last year. So I get the feeling the script was sitting on the shelf for a long time, and then somebody dusted it off and was like, yeah, go ahead, shoot it. It's got James Remar in it as well, and he just like he outacts everybody in the movie. Like he steals every scene. But yeah, it's terrible. It's really bad. I would only recommend it for the most ardent Scott Adkins fan, like me, who apparently will watch anything that he's in.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's for me. Like I always joke with people that I've got to, because like the guy we're going to be talking about in a minute here, Don the Dragon Wilson. I watched a movie of his called like Safari or something. It's he did. I did. Let me pull him up on IMDb because I can't. It's horrible that I actually reviewed this movie and I can't remember.
I gotta
What?
say, I've seen a boatload of Dawn the Dragon Wilson movies. I've seen all the Blood Fists. I've seen all the Ring of Fires. I've seen all of his PM stuff. I've seen a
Yeah.
ridiculous amount, and I haven't seen that one.
Hollywood Safari. It's actually a PM flick. Hollywood Safari. That's the name
What?
of it. Yes, and
Really?
so I I watched it because I had to do them all. Now I'm a little bit behind. There's two interesting things about being behind now with yeah, it looks like according to IMDb I'm one of three people that reviewed it. Yes, yeah, TV Guide actually reviewed it too, which is interesting. But yeah but so Don the Dragon Wilson, he yeah, it actually has Ted Jan Roberts and John Savage as well. But yeah, it was one of those things where it's like, you know what, I got to review them all. David Leisure, remember the Joe Azuzu was in it as well. But yeah, I was like, I gotta do every Don the Dragon, so I'm gonna do that one. And then one of the things, I went on hiatus in the mid 2000s, like it just sort of not a planned hiatus, but between like 2014 and 2019, I didn't really review any films. And what happened was, whoever does IMDb, I think Will Slater from Exploding Helicopter was saying that he thinks it's like Wikipedia kind of thing, where it's sort of like crowdsourced or crowd edited. And so a whole bunch of movies that he did under the name Donald Wilson in like the kind of the mid to late 80s in the Philippines, they all cropped up on his IMDb page. And then when I was reviewing one of them just this weekend, a bunch of them, including the one I was reviewing, what was it called? Saigon Commandos. They got removed, and they got moved to a separate page by someone named Donald Wilson. And so it's this mystery, like, is Donald Wilson Don the Dragon Wilson? Because there's no picture, of course, on IMDb for this Donald Wilson. But it's strange that Donald Wilson's career ends right around the same time that Don the Dragon Wilson goes by Don the Dragon, when he's no longer just Don
That's
Wilson.
bizarre.
Yeah, it's the strangest
I had
thing.
no idea. I mean, I didn't know that he possibly was in stuff before then. I mean, like I said, I've gone above and beyond. I think I've watched most of his Roger Corman movies, including
Yeah.
all the Blood Fists. Like he's one of those, like Don the Dragon Wilson's one of those guys that I feel like no matter how many of his movies I watch, there will always be one more. Like there's just always one more. There just is. I mean, I watched a recent one that he wasn't even in it very much. It had him and Cynthia Rothrock was in it briefly, and Olivier Gruner was in it
Oh,
briefly.
oh, was that the one?
Uh,
Manila, Showdown in Manila.
yeah,
They
with
just show up at the end.
yeah, and it had gosh, who else was in it? It had the Russian guy. He was the
Right.
main.
Nevsky.
Yeah, who's like trying to be like a new action guy, and he's got the look, but whew, boy, he's not the most interesting guy in the world.
No.
Give him a chance. He'll yeah, I mean, whatever. I'll probably watch another one of his movies, but yeah, I mean, his work ethic must be insane because like
Yeah.
he's pumped out at least one movie a year for what, probably 20 years, more than 20 years
So like
now.
30 now, yeah. Because so he took a period of time off between what was it here? Between '07 and 2012, and then he did like a short in that window. So really, it's more like from '07. He did The Last Sentinel, which I believe was directed by Jesse Johnson. Let me check. Yeah, Jesse V. Johnson, who we know does a lot of
Yeah,
Scott Adkins
yeah,
films.
right.
Yeah, so he did that one, Last Sentinel. I remember catching that one on Sci-Fi. And then it says he did a short in 2012 called Liberator, which I've never seen. But then he comes back in 2015 with Scorpion King 4, which I don't know if you saw that one yet. I didn't see it because I was scared off by the runtime, and then Netflix got rid of it. So, 145 is what it's telling me. Yeah, but so 105 minutes. That's always going to scare me for a little bit. And,
me too. Me too. It's kind of like, oh, this is going to be flabby and boring because you didn't know how to trim it down. It's like, no, that's 90 minutes is really. It's either 90 minutes or 2 hours. It's like that 1 hour and 45. It's like, nah. No. I bet you could have trimmed at least 10. I bet you could have. You could have tightened it up a little bit.
Right. I mean, what is the Scorpion King story that we need that has to be more than 90 minutes long? Like, what is that? What does that entail? So, yeah, it's funny because with Tubi, they do tend to take movies down here or there. Like, I think actually an Atkins film that I'd meant to watch that I didn't get to was Home Invasion that they took down, I believe. So they do sometimes.
I don't know if I've seen Home Invasion.
It's not really an action film. It's got Natasha Henstridge. It's like it's kind of like what was that Panic Room with yeah, I haven't seen it fully, but so Atkins is the bad guy.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, that's one of the ones I haven't seen. There's a couple. There's another one, I think Pit Fighter is another one I don't think I've seen.
That one's
2005.
Yeah, I've been meaning to see that one too.
No kidding.
I think that one's Jesse V. Johnson as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. So I haven't seen that one. There's a handful, but I mean, God bless him. He's holding that torch high, and hopefully other people will get into it. I feel like, and again, this is another aside away from our Don the Dragon Wilson discussion, but I feel like Scott Adkins and Michael Jai White need to work together a lot. Like maybe they just, I don't know. I just feel like those two guys, like if they made a bunch of movies where they were friends. Mm-hmm. Or maybe the next one's a villain and the other one isn't. Like I just feel like them together in a series of films would be like unstoppable.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Michael Jai White gets kind of screwed with crappy roles. Like
yeah, it's a shame. Yeah.
He's not so good at picking stuff. Not so good. Although he did do a movie not too long ago that was like a sequel to Sudden Death. It was
it wasn't great. Yeah.
I like that one. I thought it was fine. I was like, you know what? This is solid. It's straightforward. It's like a Jeep. It wasn't anything. It wasn't anything fancy, but it got the job done and was fine. I was like, you know what? This is fine. It's certainly better than some of the other ones I've seen with him. He did one with Stone Cold, Chain of Command.
Yes.
Good God, that one's terrible.
Yeah, I remember doing that one, Chain of Command, and I looked it up because the person who directed that one directed a movie called like I can never remember the name of it. It's like 7 something, but it had like Val Kilmer and Ving Rhames in it. And so, I mean, this was a director who had done stuff before, and I think something went wrong with that movie because when I saw that other movie that he did with Val Kilmer and Ving Rhames before this, it didn't look anything like that. Chain of Command. It looked like a very competent film, whereas this looked like something that, that looked like somebody who was an amateur. Yeah, I feel like something must have gone wrong because you notice when you watch that too, like there's things that happen in it, like there's like a scene where somebody's like, I think they're like tied. I think like maybe Michael Jai White is tied to something, or the woman is tied up or something, but in another scene they're not, and then the next thing they are, and I think somebody falls off a building. You can see them land on the cushioning.
Yeah, it felt super cheap and it was boring, and somehow they underused Stone Cold as well. Yes. And it's like he's got a presence. He's not the best actor in the world, but he's got a presence, and he just spends a lot of the movie sitting down talking, and it's like I don't want Stone Cold to sit around and talk. He's not he can cut a mean promo, but he's not the most believable actor. I want to see him knock people down and just act tough and look scary because that's exactly what he is. But anyway.
And he has so much natural charisma, and I don't think I've seen a single DTV film that he's done since he got out of wrestling that showcases that real charisma. And maybe
I agree because in wrestling he was like one of the most charismatic guys ever.
Yes.
He was as charismatic as The Rock was, and I don't know. Yeah, I feel like he doesn't know. Maybe he doesn't take direction. Maybe that's it. Maybe he's just like, listen, I'm just gonna do what I'm gonna do because I'm Stone Cold, and they're like, all right, well, it doesn't look so good, but go for it, I guess. Who knows? Who knows? A lot of wrestlers have trouble going into like actual films. Like they can't, that transition doesn't work so well from wrestling to actual acting.
Yeah, when you think about it, right? I mean, Roddy Piper, of course, is the one that comes to mind as like kind of the most successful, if you want to call it, other than The Rock, of course. The Rock,
Right.
Rock stands out, but I mean, Piper for what the films we watch, of course. I mean,
Right. And
he's
he's
got
great.
a huge, yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely did better than Hulk Hogan or any
Hulk
of the
Hogan
other.
was awful. He was
Right.
so bad. Like they kept putting him in movies, and he kept being. Bill Goldberg was fine.
Yeah,
In Santa's Sleigh, he could have had
that's
more of a
right.
career.
Yes,
Bill
yes.
Goldberg could have done it, I think. He was one of them, but I mean, and John Cena has actually had a really good film career outside of wrestling, and he has the ability to have the charisma. He's very watchable. I feel like John Cena's quite good, but yeah, there's quite a few wrestlers where it's just like, oh, buddy. No,
Right.
this ain't working. No, and what's weird is when they're in movies and they don't let them do any wrestling at all.
Yeah.
It's like they suddenly try to make them seem like they know how to do some kind of martial art, and it's like, no, man,
Right.
but you don't, and it's obvious that you don't, but you
Yeah.
do know how to like do all kinds of crazy awesome stuff. Just do that. Like a
Yeah.
wrestling fan wants to see that. They want to see Randy Orton drop an RKO on somebody. They don't want to see Randy Orton like do a roundhouse kick. Like I don't think so. At least I
Yeah.
don't.
Well, because you mentioned John Cena, and one of the things I think about is like the first couple movies like that they did with him, with like the Marine and 12 Rounds. It was almost like they were just trying to like, oh, we couldn't get Mark Wahlberg kind of films,
Yeah.
where it just felt like he was trying too hard. Like, oh, they're both, I mean, John Cena is not from Boston; he's like from Newton, kind of actually close to where I grew up in Maine. He's like closer to me, well, maybe not closer to me than Boston, but kind of that in between area. Whereas Mark Wahlberg's Dorchester, he's like real, kind of hard Boston area, and they would kind of try to make John Cena into that when that's not who he was. But then you watch some things like that Tour de Pharmacy, kind of shorter film that Andy Samberg did that was kind of like a spoof on cycling, where John Cena is playing this like like Scandinavian guy who's just like all roided up when he's cycling, and then Dolph comes in to play like the older version of him, like grown up, kind of like, I guess, like the race takes place in the 70s, and then they're interviewing them after. Yeah, and I mean,
to be fair, like a lot of action stars aren't great actors. Like Dolph's not a great actor. He's just fun to watch. Don the Dragon Wilson is also not a good actor. He's just fun to watch, and he's like, I feel like Don the Dragon Wilson is very meat and potatoes kind of guy, and that's fine. You could be that. You can, like, you don't have to be the most charismatic person in the world, to still have fun watching their stuff. And a lot of wrestlers they just somehow miss the mark. I don't know. I don't exactly know how it happens. I've actually got the Marine 3 coming to me from Netflix, with The Miz, which I haven't seen. I just watched the Marine, and I thought it was really bad. I really didn't enjoy it. It was like groan-inducing stupid. Like it wasn't fun stupid. It was just like, oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, this is painful.
That's what I mean. Like that one in 12 Rounds, they seem like movies that Mark Wahlberg was like, I'm not doing this. This is and so they were like, well, who can we get to be Mark Wahlberg? And they get John, where it's like I totally know what you mean about like the acting part, because like, we're going to talk about Don the Dragon here, and but John Cena has like a certain personality that's he's not just Mark Wahlberg just because they're from the same part of the United States, and they both lift weights.
No, and he can be really funny too. He's got good comic timing as well. I feel like John Cena is either on the precipice of launching into a much bigger career, or he just somehow barely missed it, because he's quite fun. He was really fun. I just rewatched Bumblebee with my kids a few weekends ago, and I was like, oh, I forgot John Cena was in this, and I also forgot he's a lot of fun in it. Like he's a total bright spot in that movie. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. And then we watched the one where he's like a firefighter, like a wilderness firefighter, and that one was pretty fun too. It was like, yeah, he's fine. Like I'm coming around on him. I was not interested for the longest time. I was like, whatever, I don't care. Also, he guest starred on Psych, the TV show Psych, a bunch of times, and me and my kids like that show quite a bit. And he's super fun on the show when he's on it. So, because Psych was on USA, and so that's where SmackDown is.
Right,
So
wrestling. It's
they
right.
sneak wrestlers on there every now and then, and he was one that like really worked. Big Show did really well too. He was quite fun too. But I feel that was the thing. That was another thing. I watched a movie with Big Show and Dean Cain. I don't remember what it was called. Oh, Vendetta. Big Show's in prison, and Dean Cain goes to prison, and they're like bitter rivals. And it was he just wasn't very good.
Yeah.
It was not that it was okay. I mean, I'm not a big fan of prison movies anyway, but it was like it was okay.
Yeah, the prison movie is a tough one to pull off. Like you really have to be. It really has to be kind of like Avengement with Atkins. It's got to be like kind of a real special creation, or Death Warrant. I think it was good for because for the most part, one, the hero has to get beaten up a lot, right, by guards and things, and I think it's hard to make an action movie work well if the hero's getting beaten up a lot, like
right. And it's hard to make one that's fun, and also aesthetically, you're stuck in a gray building with bars.
Yeah.
So that's tough. Like there's a Blood Fist with Dawn the Dragon Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
I can't.
I think part 3, right?
I can't remember. I thought it was a later one. Whichever one it is, it's not.
Richard Roundtree.
It's really not a really good one. It's just like this is not one of the. I mean, Blood Fist is like, gosh, those vary dramatically in their fun factor. Some are very fun, and other ones are just a total drag. Like there's a couple where he doesn't even get to fight.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's called Blood Fist, dude. It's supposed to be about fighting, and he's like shooting people the whole time. It's like I want to watch him fight people. Like that's why I'm watching a Dawn the Dragon Wilson movie. I don't want to. Which thankfully, to bring it back to CyberTracker, he does get to fight. In fact, he gets to fight Richard Norton, which is awesome.
Yes. Well, one thing I was going to think that there's kind of a good way to bring this into CyberTracker is that. One of the interesting things about CyberTracker is it almost has like a Blood Fist storyline, because it seems like a lot of those Blood Fists from like maybe like 4 through 8 are all just Don the Dragon Wilson as some guy who is like framed for something or somehow gets caught in some kind of conspiracy, and it's him against the world.
Yes.
And I that's when I'm watching this, because of course this is PM Entertainment as opposed to Roger Corman, but it had that feel of like a Blood Fist kind of movie.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I hadn't even really considered that at all, but you're right. A whole bunch of the Blood Fists are precisely that, him on the run for some reason. And that's exactly what happens in CyberTracker. In CyberTracker, he sees something he wasn't supposed to see. And now he's on the run because he's not going to play ball with the bad guys. And, but I guess the difference here being that CyberTracker, it's set in the future where there's these they keep calling them cyborgs.
Right.
But it's like, bro, they're androids, they're robots. In my definition of a cyborg is that you're part human. These things are not part human. They're just Terminators that go around. They're like a blend of Terminator and Judge Dredd. They are the executioners that go around and police Los Angeles in the future, and they're being operated by a corrupt politician / corporate overlord type thing. And Don the Dragon Wilson is a Secret Service agent who kind of gets caught, and again, it's him against the world. Suddenly he's public enemy number 1, and he has to find a way. And like at the beginning of the movie, where we've seen like these terrorists as being the bad guys, and then we come to find out that they're actually the good guys, and that's definitely a very Blood Fisty type thing as well. But CyberTracker is 100% PM Entertainment. There's no question. There is no question this is a PM movie. I wrote down a couple of the runtimes here. For those of you who are interested, I only wrote down a few. But at 5 minutes in, we get a car explosion. So it's like, okay, we're already in PM Entertainment world when 5 minutes into a movie, a car blows up.
Yes.
And then at 13 minutes in, we
Right.
get a helicopter explosion
Yes.
because PM Entertainment loves blowing up helicopters. And
Yeah.
then 14 minutes in, you get a van jump slash explosion. So 1 minute later, you're still reeling from the fact that they actually blew up a helicopter. And then you're like, nope, that's not good enough. We got to jump this van and we got to blow it up at the same time because this is PM Entertainment and you can't stop the action for more than 7 minutes, right? It's incredible. At one point in this movie, they jump a fire truck,
Yes.
which was just like I was like I can't believe I forgot that because this is at least the second or third time that I've seen this movie, and I was like, oh my god, they're gonna jump a fire truck. I've never seen that before. God bless PM Entertainment.
Yes. Well, because the funny thing is, you talk about how this is unmistakably PM, but what's funny is the Tubi version that I think we both saw, actually says this is Imperial Entertainment film, and I don't remember. Actually, I didn't watch all the credits all the way through. I probably should have just to see if the PM logo came up at the end. But it's funny because you see, Richard Pepin
Yep.
as the director, so he's the P in PM. And I mean, it's like you said, it's unmistakably PM. I didn't write down the 5 minutes for the first car explosion with the bazooka, but I did have the 13-minute mark for the helicopter explosion. I was like,
So, of course,
right.
it's like they had the thing about that. There's something about a PM movie. They love blowing up a helicopter, even if it's just like a frame of a helicopter. Like they cheat it sometimes. They'll just have like the frame of a helicopter and it'll just like blow up. But they love doing that. They love jumping cars and exploding cars, and they love throwing people out of glass windows.
Yes, yes. And the funny thing is, I covered a movie called To the Limit. The second of the two Anna Nicole Smith
Yep, I've
films.
seen it.
Yes, and it's like you watch that movie, and it's kind of a drag, right? It's kind of like a lot of stuff happening, but there's two helicopter explosions. I
Yes.
think there's like four car flip explosions as well, and so it's like, how can
And
a
somebody
movie?
gets killed by a CD.
Exactly,
Like
exactly.
somebody like a CD comes at someone's head and kills them. So
Yes,
it's like, yes, To the Limit has it's got a lot of high highs and some low lows, and a lot of sleaze. That
right.
one, like of the two Anna Nicole Smith movies, that one's like way sleazy. Like if you want to see Anna Nicole Smith get it on with old men who are like way older than she is, like John Travolta's
Yeah,
older brother,
right.
sleazy, greasy, like ponytailed, gross John Travolta's older brother, that's the movie for you. If you're like, this would be hotter if that guy was old enough to be her dad, that's the movie for you. You got it.
If you ever read in the trivia, apparently Joey Travolta had planned on, which this doesn't make any sense because this is that movie is supposed to be a sequel to a film that he did, Da Vinci's War, I think, or something like that, where he's playing the main character, and so then suddenly this is a sequel, and he was saying he wasn't going to play the main character, but he realized he had such great chemistry with Anna Nicole Smith that he had to act in the film. It's like,
Oh yeah, I'm sure that's what it was. I'm sure it
no.
was the chemistry.
The
Sure.
fact, oh yeah, when I read that, I couldn't believe it. I mean that one's great too because that one also has it has Jana Prea, which is also in CyberTracker. I think anybody who watched Full House, he was Uncle Jesse's dad. I think Jana Prea.
I don't remember. Yeah, I'm sure you're right. I don't remember. What I
Yeah,
do remember is in the other Anna Nicole Smith one, the skyscraper, that she spends the whole movie like in a helicopter flight suit.
right.
So, and it fits her like a potato sack. And
Hmm.
it's like you paid for Anna Nicole Smith to be in your movie, and then you're giving her like the dumpiest outfit you could possibly give her that just makes her look like overweight and like it seems strange. It's like putting Jean-Claude Van Damme in a movie, but he's wearing like super baggy clothes. It's like, listen, he's in the movie because he's an attractive man. And
Right.
he's very physically fit, and he wants to show off his physique, as I'm sure she probably wanted to as well, because she was in the prime of her life, and that was her value at the time. It just seemed very strange to me. It's like you have this Playboy model, but you're gonna put her in an ill-fitting suit
Yeah.
throughout the whole movie. Like it didn't make any sense to me at all. It's like that.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just
because
strange.
The thing is, if you ever watch the outtakes from that movie, from Skyscraper,
Uh-huh.
there's a YouTube uh, collection that has like all the outtakes from Skyscraper, and one of the things I picked up from that was that I think that they made her character a helicopter pilot so that they could feed her the lines through the headset. Because when you're watching the scenes, like the outtakes, somebody is telling her the line and then she's messing it up and they have to shoot it again. I think that was part of the reason why they made that character like that, was this so she could she could, they could feed her the lines as they went.
It's entirely possible. I mean, hey, come on. I mean, she was a model. She wasn't necessarily an actress. You give her a
Right.
break. I'm sure it was one of her first films or her first film. Um, yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. And also, she has to be helicopter pilot because they had some sort of fetishism for helicopters. I've never seen so many helicopters in a movie outside of a PM film.
Yeah.
Like they're always really front and center. They love shooting them, they like shooting from them, they like blowing them up. It's almost like a boyhood fantasy thing, like that they just think that helicopters are like the coolest things ever, and it's like every PM movie has to have a helicopter, and CyberTracker is no different. Like they all have to have one somewhere somehow, and they love blowing them up. Maybe they hate helicopters. Maybe that's what it is. They just are
Right.
like, you know what? Screw helicopters. We're gonna blow up everyone we can find. We want to eliminate the helicopters from the earth.
Maybe what it is like when they would film in L.A. Maybe like 'cause there'd be helicopters around, and they would mess up the filming, they mess up the shooting all the time. Like it's just like I'm trying to get this scene in here, and all of a sudden there's this
Stupid
helicopter.
helicopter.
Right?
It's
Maybe.
possible. It's especially during that era when you had a lot of news helicopters in the
Right.
air catching all the high speed pursuits that everyone was obsessed with during the 90s. I have to say, I'm always so impressed that they do actually shoot all their movies in Los Angeles, and
Yeah.
that they shut down an entire highway for films, and that the futuristic location that they love shooting, the one with all the glass
Yes.
windows, that's a water treatment plant in LA. It's like it's nothing cool at all. It's just this unique water treatment plant that they loved filming at. But it's like it's incredibly expensive to shoot in Los Angeles. I mean, the fact that they were shooting there, I mean, yeah, they had the convenience of having all the stuntmen and everybody there. Nobody had to travel, and they wouldn't have to like fly anybody anywhere necessarily. But like, just the permits must have been insane to get to film all their crazy stuff. They're like, okay, we need a permit to blow up a helicopter over a highway. I'm sorry, what? Oh yeah, and you're gonna need to shut down a highway all day so we can blow up this helicopter on it. Trust us, it'll go fine. Like, where's the permit for that? Like, LA is one of the hardest. LA and New York are the two hardest places to film at because the permitting is really expensive and draconian. I mean, it's not easy to film there because everybody wants to film there. So I'm always so impressed by those locations and seeing that because their films were made on such a modest budget.
Yeah.
I mean, they made their films on a fraction of what Canon made their films on, and Canon
Right.
was already a fraction of studios. So it's
Right.
unbelievable how far they were able to stretch their dollar. I would love a documentary like the two Canon documentaries that came out. I would love one about PM Entertainment, because I would love to get an interview with like the stuntmen and the actors. Grab Don the Dragon Wilson and grab Gary Daniels
Yeah.
and people that were very front and center for PM Entertainment. And I want to hear those stories. I want to hear all the insane stuff that happened because I, they have the biggest jumps, the largest explosions. Like, stuff happened.
Yes. Now, have you ever read the article on hopesandfears.com, Oral History of PM Entertainment?
Yeah, it's by Joe Yannick, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes,
So
yeah. I'm familiar with him. I've spoken with him on many occasions, and it's fantastic. I mean,
yeah.
that's the only history that we have.
Right. Right. It just kind of gives you a taste of like what it's like you get this little taste of it, and it's like what more could we, you're right. Like especially because like people like Don the Dragon, weren't. I mean the fact that Cynthia Rothrock was interviewed, I think she only did a couple PM flicks. When you think about all the people that, yeah, I mean the best ones I thought Kathleen Kinmont. Talking about working with Wings Hauser on the Art of Dying.
God.
Yeah.
Dude, that's right. All the Wings. Yeah, Wings Hauser, like, he must have just been absolutely bonkers to work with. Like, he was probably either a lot of fun or just miserable, depending on like how he felt about you or what was going on in his head at the time. I mean, he's one of those guys that strikes me as somebody who's like probably very intelligent, very quick with his brain, but at the same time probably pretty loose with his tongue too. Like you could probably have a pretty deep conversation with him, but at the same time he'd probably be pretty mean if he wanted to be. I mean, if his performance in Road to Revenge is of any indication of just how out there he can get, my gosh. And the fact that he was directing those movies too is like, man, I can only imagine. I can only imagine like what insane stories must have come out of there, and Lawrence Hilton, like him, the movies that he made as well, and get Art Camacho out there, like, all right, man, you directed a bunch of these, you did the fight choreography for a bunch of these,
Yeah.
like he would be a wonderful resource for that as well. And like Evan Lurie, who was in a bunch of them too, like get him out there.
Yeah.
Evan Lurie is he's an art dealer now.
I've seen that. I remember I looked him up. I think he came up on Instagram or something. I can't remember how that happened, but yeah, I saw that he's he's an art dealer in like Indiana, I think.
Yeah, and doing quite well for himself as well. And it's like, hey, good on you. I mean, I loved him in movies. He's so beefy and big, and
Yes.
he was great at playing the villain. And
Oh yeah.
I love Evan Lurie. He's great. Every time I see his name on the credits, I'm like, all right, I
Yeah.
hope he plays the villain. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah, he's one of my all-time favorites, I think. And I mean, you think of like the PM, like another futuristic PM, T-Force, and Hologram,
Yep.
man. He actually did two
Yep.
futuristic PMs, and it's funny how PM does sci-fi, because we're thinking about your book with your awful, awesome sci-fi films. It's like most sci-fi is kind of low-budget sci-fi. It's like on a spaceship, like one location. You're just kind of on the ship maybe doing stuff, or you're on a planet, and the planet is just kind of like out in the woods, maybe in Colorado or someplace, like you said,
Right.
a place that you can afford to go, or maybe also your futuristic place is like it's like Boston or whatever city, New York of the future, but it's really Montreal.
Right.
And I think what makes the PM sci-fi so fascinating, and CyberTracker might be the best example. It's either that one or T-Force. They're actually Hologram Man. I guess like I could just keep naming those three over and over again, but they're so clearly a PM flick that just happens to take place in the future.
Right. And they're always they're always a great blend of the sci-fi and action. Like I wish that they would have made more of them, and unfortunately they didn't really dabble that much in sci-fi action. They made a handful, but their bread and butter was just straight action. They also made the Steel Frontier, right? The
Yes.
post-apocalyptic one. That one's not great. I'll admit it. It's not a home run, but I really would have liked to have seen more post-apocalyptic Mad Max style PM entertainment flicks. That might be the only one that they did that I can think of. And it's okay. It's got Joe Lara, who's not the greatest lead. He's okay. Not super charismatic. But Hologram Man is super fun, and so is T-Force. And they really had a good thing going with CyberTracker and CyberTracker 2. They're both really fun movies. I find it interesting too that Don the Dragon Wilson worked with it's like he was working with Corman and he was working with PM, and then at some point he just was kind of just exclusively working with Corman with all those Blood Fist movies later. So I would be interested to know, like, why did Rothrock only make a couple of PM movies? Why did Don the Dragon Wilson only make a handful of, I mean, he probably made the most, but
Right.
him and Gary Daniels probably made the most with PM. It makes me wonder, because PM didn't go out of business until like the late 90s, right? Or
Right.
early 2000s.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, because it's interesting because you think of two names that we just, or one name we talked about, Wings Hauser, and the other one, Lorenzo Lamas. They did like some early PM. You know, they
That's
were pretty
right.
big with the early PM. But then as the '90s go on, you don't see as much of either of them, and that's you see more Don the Dragon Wilson. I think kind of like this period. And then Gary Daniels, like you talked about. I think I can't remember Jack Scalia. He was kind of more
Uh-huh.
in that mid to late period, and then Fahey,
Yeah.
yeah, he came
Yeah.
in with,
Yeah, he
with the
did a
late
couple.
ones.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, C. Thomas Howell, of course. I mean, the
Yes.
super,
Oh God. Yes, that's right. C.
yeah,
Thomas Howell did a bunch of them. That's right.
yeah,
In late PM, and really, it's that middle era of like
yeah,
94 to 97, or maybe 90
yeah,
or 97, that are just hit after hit after hit
yeah,
after hit, where they're just amazing. And what strikes me as so strange is that I only discovered PM Entertainment when I started digging into stuff that I was hoping would be fun to watch with friends, like the Awful
right,
Awesome stuff. I never saw these on. I never, or at least I never rented them in the video store days. I have no idea if my video stores had them or not, or if the
right,
covers just weren't very attractive. I don't really know. It's strange that it seems like they were almost, people slept on them.
right.
I think in the 90s, I think people had a stronger awareness of canon because they had Charles Bronson and Chuck Norris.
Hmm.
They had big names, whereas PM Entertainment never really did. um I didn't discover Gary Daniels until way late in the game. I never watched his stuff back in the day. Again, I'm not sure I had access, so maybe it was a matter of distribution or something, but I feel like if a wider group of people, if a larger swath of cult cinema fans saw a handful of PM Entertainment films and viewed them with the right lens,
Right.
realizing that these are just over the top, hyperbolic, tons of shooting, crazy action, and that was what you were going to get. You weren't going to get something gritty or realistic. You're going to get an extension of canon. You're going to get, something that Sho Kosugi would have been a part of, had he continued making films. um, I feel like more people would dig them. I really feel like they're a kind of a hidden, a missed thing, and I wish that a Vincent or somebody would put out like a PM Entertainment series and really make that front and center and say, like, these are PM movies and you should watch them because they're PM movies.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, one of the things I always talk with Ty of Comeuppance Reviews. We'll kind of chat sometimes, and because he's a fan of Tubi as well, and like why like every PM film isn't on Tubi. Like they should at least be on Tubi. And then the fact that yeah, we could get those on like a Blu-ray or something. I mean, I remember, so like for me with PM, it wasn't like I was like, oh, this is a PM movie, but some of these ones I remember at least that type of movie on like cable, whether it was HBO or if like when TNT and those stations started to play movies. But HBO in particular had a lot of these PM flicks, and they'd be on like kind of off prime time. So it's like if you're home during the day. I mean, I remember when I first moved out of my house and got out of college and had my own place, I had HBO, because I could, like, it was just me, so I was able to
Hmm.
just get to splurge on HBO. And I remember these would be on a lot, like these PM films. You just and other similar types. Some of the Corman ones would be on as well. And I think that's where the market was a lot of times too. I mean, I do know people, like I said, like Ty and Brett from Comeuppance. They used to work at a video store in Connecticut where they're from, and I think they would see these PM films on the shelves, and so they were kind of familiar with them from that part of it. Whereas I think you're right. Like for me, it's like I remember going to the video store with my friends in the 90s, and we would do a lot of DTV stuff, but it would oftentimes be horror more often than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like those were the ones people were grabbing off the shelves.
Yeah, it's really a shame because these are super fun. I've watched a bunch of them with my friends, and I've kind of, now they know. Now at this
Mhm.
point, they're, if I trot out a PM movie, my friends who aren't necessarily the most ardent, like crazy movie buffs like I am, they just enjoy watching like cheesy crap with me. They can tell me what the tropes are gonna be. You know what I mean? Like we've watched enough of them, and they are so much a motif in their films. It's like, okay, well, we know we're going to get a lot of explosions, we know there's going to be a lot of action, we know there's going to be a lot of car jumps and stuff. And so and that's the great thing about PM movies. They set up an expectation and they deliver
Yeah.
for the most part, as long as you're talking about that middle era. I mean, yeah, early PM is like a total minefield. Some are really boring and not good at all because they hadn't figured out the formula. but
Right.
but once they got that formula going, it was incredible. It was so amazing. Like they knew how to give you exactly what you wanted. And it would just be so nice to see something like CyberTracker because the film, like CyberTracker, visually is very interesting. Like there's a lot of shadowy imagery, a
Mhm.
lot of blue filters because it's the future, right? Because so everything has to be blue.
Right.
There's some fun special effects with the CyberTrackers themselves. Obviously, the huge explosions as well. And I feel like if that was polished up on a really nice Blu-ray, it would look incredible. And you already have a sequel. You've already got CyberTracker 2, which also delivers. That's
Yeah.
also a good movie. They're both fun. I just looked it up. CyberTracker has a 3.8 on the Internet Movie Database.
Yeah.
3.8. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Why would it have a 3.8? And it's because people are viewing the film with the wrong lens.
Right.
They're
Right.
not viewing it for what it is, and that's like saying Death Wish 3 is a 3.8. It's like no,
Right.
it's not. It's really fun, but you got to go into it with the right expectations, which is really what I'm trying to do with my books is to kind of gear you up for the right expectation. This is not, Bloodsport. This is not a movie that you can sit and watch and be like, this is cheesy, but it's also really good.
Right.
Like Bloodsport's one of my favorite movies. I watch it on my birthday pretty much every year. I love the soundtrack. Um, that's one that I'll totally defend. Like if people are like, "Oh, this movie's dumb," it's like, no, shut up. It's not dumb. It's actually great. It's really smart. It's really well written. You just don't understand. Like it's lean. It's perfect. It's a
Mhm.
perfect tournament movie.
Yeah.
The only thing you could possibly take out of Bloodsport that is unnecessary is the love interest angle, and that
Right.
could even be argued. Like it's so perfect. So if you're hoping for something that is very serious and Oscar worthy, no, like PM's not going to give you that, right? Or even like if you're looking for like a fix of like of like a top tier like Arnold movie, it's like no, that's not what it is, and it's not trying to be that either. Although CyberTracker does lift some stuff from Terminator, which is pretty funny. Like the shootout in
Right.
in like the police station at the end. It's like, oh my gosh, he even has two guns. Like they're just totally lifted that entire scene from Terminator, which I thought was quite funny. But it's just oh god, it's so fun, and it's totally lean. It's 86 minutes.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing I think with these. Like, I think one of the things I think it I think it's always good to kind of like because we talk about like riffing movies and and I think even with Mystery Science Theater 3000 when they were riffing movies, yes, sometimes it sounded like maybe they could be like kind of mean on the film, but I think probably the meanest that they ever were was when they did Final Justice, the Joe Don Baker film, because I think they'd heard that he wasn't a fan of their take on Mitchell, so they just kind of went full on at him. Um, but I think when we watch these movies and riff on them, it's like I think the way I always describe it is it's like when you've got a family and you've got like siblings and it's like the siblings fight, but if somebody from outside the family gives the siblings a hard time, it's like no, everybody kind of gangs up on that person because it's like you know
Totally.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is with these movies. Like, we'll poke fun at them, but it's like if somebody starts looking down on them, we're like, "Hey, you don't get this. You don't get this is what this is about." And I think that's kind of how we feel about them. It's like we poke fun at what we're seeing here because we're just having fun with it, and it's like we get it. We get what they're trying to do with these
It's
movies.
good natured. It's good
Right,
natured ribbing. We're still entertained. We're on the side
right.
of the movie when we're watching it. We're not against it, and we're not lording ourselves above it. We're not watching it and going like, "Oh, these people are so dumb. This thing, blah, 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 blah." Like that's not it. That's not it at all. It's like, oh my gosh, look at Dawn's hair. It's ridiculous. Or oh, when like the gun morphs out of the
That's what it's like.
CyberTracker's leg is like,
Right.
it's silly. It's like, well, why does that happen? That's not explained. Or when the Agnes machine pretends to be drunk was funny. It's just goofy. It's goofy but endearingly goofy,
Yeah.
right? And I think your analogy is spot on. It's like, you can make fun of your friends all you want to. Like you can make fun of like, oh, where'd you get those shoes? Like, what are you
Right.
doing? But if somebody else that out from outside of your circle were to say something about them, you're like, no, that's
Right.
nope, nope, that's my friend. You can't say that. So it's not it's not sneering at the films at
Right.
all. Like I legitimately really like PM movies. I get excited to watch them. I'm When they want me to cheer, I'm cheering. You know what I
Right.
mean? I'm not like, boo, this is lame. I'm like, oh man, did you see that car jump? Which is exactly what they want me to do. They
Right.
want
Right.
me to cheer it, and I cheer it. And I think that the people that made it, looking back on them now, would be like, I don't think that they would be offended. In fact,
No.
I think they'd probably be surprised that anybody would like love them. They would probably be like, yeah, those are kind of embarrassing now because they're so 90s and they're so cheesy. And like the people that worked on would probably feel like looking at their high school like graduation photos like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking, sort of a thing. But in reality, it's like, no, man, these are fantastic, and it's not. There's a school of thought when it comes to watching a movie, specifically to watch it with your friends and like goof off and like comment on it, and that's like, well, you're just watching it ironically, and you're being disingenuous, and you're just watching this to make yourself feel better because you can lord yourself above the people who made it, and that's not how I feel at all. I would be very happy to talk to anybody who had anything to do with making these movies because I'm genuinely interested. I would be as interested talking to somebody who worked on a PM movie as somebody who worked on something that was quote unquote legitimate. Like I would love to talk to them about these movies. I would love to talk to Gary Daniels about these films and his like totally threadbare Cine XL movies because I'm sure there's like crazy stories about those ones too. Like, when you start digging, it's like first you find Canon, then you find PM Entertainment, and then you find Cine XL like way down at the bottom, and it's like, oh Lord, this was a thing too. Like,
Right.
woo,
Right.
these are
AIP.
these yeah, AIP, yeah, that too. Uh-huh. Right. I feel like Cine XL is like under AIP. Like
You're
AIP
right.
AIP has a certain they're still like professional, whereas CineXL is like the bottom rung of professional before you get into like full on amateur, which is fine. And they're fun and I enjoy them, and I recommend them in my books because they give you what you want them to give you. They are not a disappointment. They are fun. Because of, in some cases, how they don't follow what you would expect. Like they are unpredictable. PM movies are very predictable, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, what the unpredictable element of a PM film is like, how big are they gonna go? Like,
Right.
there's gonna be a fight scene, but how big is it gonna go? How big is the stunt gonna go? And it's often surprising because it goes so over the top. And I would argue that, I mean, when it comes to stunt driving and explosions and stuff, I don't think they've been topped.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there because I think, you know, action sort of takes a turn, I think, after PM, where I think the Matrix comes in and sort of shows like sort of this kind of bigger thing that can be done, but also can be done more with computers and not as many practical effects. When you watch a lot of these big ones now, it is more computers, because especially with a Marvel movie, you need computers to show superheroes doing things. Whereas like, this, I mean, you think of Recoil with Gary Daniels, which Art Camacho directed, and I think Spiro Razatos action directed. Which I think it's another thing too with PM is like you get someone like Art Camacho who's like big time fight choreographer who he even has an appearance in CyberTracker. It's sort of in the protest at the beginning, but he also is fight choreographer, and then he starts directing films. And I think it's cool that they use some of those really good models from like Hong Kong, where you have the director and then the action director. So they're handling things differently, and because you end up getting a movie like Recoil that, like you said, I mean, on the budget that Recoil was made on, like that should not be anywhere near the level of action that it is. But those scenes are just
Rage too.
Yeah.
Good God, Rage is insane. Like both of those. The Gary Daniels run is super impressive on PM, and so is the Dawn of the Dragon Wilson movies. Out for Blood is great. CyberTracker is great. The Ring of Fire movies are awesome, especially the second and third ones. The second one where they're like in the subterranean, like, and they're fighting all the different gangs. I love that movie. I mean, Ring of Fire is fine, except for like all the crazy like racial stuff. Like there's so much racism stuff. It's like it's fine. And then they're like, you know what, let's just go in completely different direction, and make him fight in the underground, literally in the underground. And it's the same character throughout all three films as well, which is nice. They're a very, very solid run of movies. And CyberTracker is a great one. I had a lot of fun with watching it last night. I was like, wow, I forgot a lot of stuff in this. It moves quickly, it delivers all the action you want it to, and it has that 90s sci-fi sheen to it as well, with like the CyberTracker's face, like you can see like the metal, and it's not the best, but it's fine. And the corrupt government, which was like totally probably influenced by like the X-Files. It's just it's a lot of fun, and CyberTracker 2 is fine, is a lot of fun as well. If I recall, I think I have one of them on DVD, and I got it for like 99 cents somewhere at like the dollar store or something. And I took it home, didn't even know what PM Entertainment was, and was just like totally had my hair blown back. I was like, what is this? This is awesome. This is exactly every time I rented a movie when I was a kid in the video store, this is what I wanted.
Yeah.
And I almost never got it. But this actually delivers everything that it promises. Another thing about PM Entertainment, which makes them very good for group watches, is that they are, other than the Anna Nicole Smith movies, they aren't sleazy.
Right. Yeah.
They're very straightforward and very chaste when it comes to nudity and sexuality, so that you can like watch them with anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like an Andy Sidaris, which, I mean, the Andy Sidaris ones are a lot of fun too. But yeah, if you were gonna like screen to a whole new group of people, CyberTracker, you'd do a lot better with CyberTracker than you would, Hard Hunted or Return to Savage Beach or something like that.
Right, exactly. Because and the Andy Sidaris ones are kind of interesting too, because like the earlier ones have a lot of nudity, but they're still like really chaste. It's like, okay, guys, we're going to change our clothes now so we can go fight. And they're just like changing their clothes, and that's it. But then I watched, I just watched one recently. It was one of the ones with Eric Estrada in it. He was in a few of them. Anyway.
Oh, yes, Guns or
And I don't remember which one was. One of them was particularly sleazy, and I was shocked. I was just like, wow, there's a lot of sex scenes in this, and they're kind of raunchy. Like there was one where there was like a close up of like a woman clutching a guy's naked butt, and it was just kind of like, And it was in a waterfall too, and it's like that'd be really cold and unpleasant, and those poor actors must have been miserable, and it looked really uncomfortable, and but it was like he kind of had to bump up the sleaze factor or something. It's like that was always a selling point, but it seemed more innocent in like Hard Ticket to Hawaii
Yeah.
or Malibu Express. Like it's more innocent in those ones to a degree. Still, still sleazy and like middle-aged divorced dad gross. Like those are all like middle-aged like divorced dad like fantasy films for sure. Whereas the PM movies don't necessarily feel that way.
Right.
And they do feel like a natural extension from canon. Like if you
Yeah.
like canon movies, they picked up the ball where canon dropped it, and they ran it. They took it farther than anybody ever has. I can't think of any other company that's even now like cranking out anything like it. I mean, you could say like the Jesse V. Johnson movies or just Scott Adkins in general.
Yeah.
He's the one that's keeping the direct to video torch burning the brightest, but nobody's doing insane. Like there's nothing like this
No.
in a Scott Adkins movie, and it's a shame because gosh, it would be amazing if it was.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, just talking about that, I reviewed The Underground recently, which is, Jeff Fahey from like I think like '97 for PM, and I was looking at that, and I really enjoyed it, and I said, man, if I was going to do top direct to video films of the '90s, Underground might not even make like the top 30, for how many good films came out in the '90s. And then I was like looking at my top 10 of the 2000s list that I did, and I looked at it, I was like, man, this would come in seventh, based on the list that I put together here. Like that's
Yeah.
And if you did 2010s, I think it might even be even higher. It just shows you what the 90s were. I think, like 80s, you could probably make a case as well, like especially like late 80s, like between 85 and 90, or 85
sure.
and 89. But we just don't see. I mean, the 2010s. It seems like it's a lot of. I think Atkins. And Jesse V. Johnson. They're trying to bring this kind of thing back. But even what they're bringing back is a different kind of thing. It's like more martial arts based, more more fights and drawn out big fight scenes, which are nice. I really like watching those. But it's not like car flips. It's not like a whole bunch of car flips or a bunch of.
Well, it's a lot cheaper, right? Like if
Right.
you're gonna flip a car, you have to that costs a huge amount of money.
Right.
And I mean, it makes sense, right? It's like the '80s were dominated when you're talking about the video store, which is really was the driving factor for this budgetary level.
Yeah.
The '80s were all about horror, and horror was just everybody who could get their hands on a camera was making horror movies because that's what video stores wanted, because the generation they wanted to get teenagers, right? The teenagers that wanted to watch horror movies in the 80s. Well, those teenagers grew up and they got tired of horror. I think it was probably the same audience. I think it was the same people. It's just they got older. It's like, well, now I'm a dad and now I don't want to watch monsters. I want to watch fit guys beating up other fit guys because I've got a spare tire and I want to live vicariously through this. So I think that I'll bet you, I mean, honestly, if you were to really look into it, it was probably the same audience that just got older and was looking for something different. And then that got old as well. There's only so many tournament movies that people are willing to watch other than me. I will watch all of them. Tell me it's a tournament movie and I will watch it. I will watch it and I will watch it. Like, I don't care what it is. I love tournament movies. I've seen so many of them. And I will watch so many more. And that's fine. Just because my love for blood sport just makes it so that I can't not watch a tournament movie. But and now there's like new driving factors of what's driving eyeballs when it comes to action. And I think because of people like Scott Adkins that are out there trying to keep this thing going or to relaunch it, it's gained a lot of traction. There's more stuff like this at Redbox and available on Tubi, and there's more people trying their hand at it for the first time. Also, just like the overall obsession with MMA has a lot to do with it as well. There's a parallel there between that. And so if you're going to have a fighting movie, it's got to be pretty MMA fighting. It can't be like traditional. It's got to have a lot of different stuff. And it's exciting to see that it's still going, that we're still getting action movies. And I don't know that we'll ever get another heyday like the PM days. Maybe those are long gone. I mean, it's just bizarre to watch them and go like, yeah, these were direct to video. These weren't even in the
Right.
theater, and they were shot on film, and they had recognizable actors in them, and they were shot in LA, not, somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, like many of the films now have to be,
Right.
um, and or in a third world country somewhere, which is, it gives its own flavor too. I mean, I'm not knocking that at all, but it is cheaper to film like in Vietnam than it is to film in the United States, which is why so many action movies are being shot there now. But it boggles the mind of what they were able to do and the amount of units they must have been selling them for,
Yeah.
for them to keep cranking them out at such a huge breakneck pace and such a huge volume. They must have been selling tons of VHS tapes, like a lot. And that's really what's hamstrung it now. I have a friend who's a filmmaker, and he was telling me like just how the vast difference between when you buy a movie on DVD
Hmm.
versus renting it on Amazon versus watching it, even worse, on Prime. The amount of money that you actually get, like when you watch a movie on Prime, the amount that they pay out is laughably small.
Right. Yeah. And I
Uh,
think they're always like cutting it too. Like they're always,
yes, yes,
yeah.
they are. Yes, they are. Which, makes me wonder if Tubi pays better, because Tubi seems to be getting a better and better selection, and maybe it's because they have the advertisements built in or something. Because it's bad, and like, not only that, but Amazon, like they'll take your film off. He was telling me all this stuff. Like if your movie gets on Amazon Prime and they find out it has nudity in it, they pull it.
Yeah.
Um, which there's still plenty of stuff on there that has nudity in it. But if you're an independent filmmaker and it gets found out, like with Samurai Cop 2, they had to keep sending it and resubmitting it because they kept pulling it for content. And so
Yeah.
they had to keep resending. He's in Samurai Cop 2. He plays a small role, and he's worked in for the director and stuff. And he's anyway. So I've kind of got the inside tip on Samurai Cop 2 and his own films, and he just keeps saying like back in the day when video stores were around and you could get a chain of video stores to buy your movie, you could do just fine financially. But once that's no longer the case, the payouts they're so abysmally small. When you're selling VHS tapes for $50 to $70 a piece, and Blockbuster needs 100,000 copies of it,
Yeah.
you made some serious cash. Whereas now, if you're getting a dollar when somebody watches your movie, I mean, my gosh, it's gonna take a lot of views.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. There's a director, Jay Horton, that I follow. He's I've reviewed some of his movies, and he does a whole series on YouTube about making movies and making money on Amazon with movies. And like for him, he did uh, horror films and a lot of different types of but they were all dramatic pieces. They weren't documentaries. And now he does documentaries because the overhead is lower. He can make the documentaries and then post them on Amazon. And he talks about too, like when you post something on Amazon, how you have to you sort of you hit this wall where you when you first put the movie out, you get the streams that you need, and then it's like then you pull it from the streaming because if we're only going to get a couple views a month, you might as well have the person pay $3.99 for the couple views a month, and you make almost the same amount of money with a few views a month at or whatever, however it ends up being, than you
Yep.
would by trying to stream it at that. And it's like it's a whole process that I don't even think about, and I'm realizing I think you're right that Tubi is paying more because he does advertise a lot that his movies are on Tubi now. That I think that's part of it is that the Tubi, maybe because you're right, because of the commercials, or maybe because they can, like they Amazon is trying to squeeze them out, and now Tubi is in the game as a competitor, and maybe Amazon might have to start paying them more again.
Well, and Amazon, they want to develop their own content. They want to
Right.
be like Netflix. They're trying to follow that model, whereas Tubi so far is not. They
Yeah.
are an aggregator of already made content.
Yeah.
My friend was telling me that there's specific content that Tubi is looking for, and that helps to drive filmmakers to make movies because they'll get something on Tubi. They're an independent filmmaker, and then they'll have meetings with Tubi, and Tubi will say, okay, well, we're really looking for these types of films. So can
Yeah.
you make these types of films? Because we know there's an audience for them. So that's kind of interesting too, that their own internal demands, like that the film that you make is being determined by Tubi,
Right.
not by your own, but not by Amazon, not by Netflix, but Tubi
Right.
is helping to drive certain
Yeah.
types of films to be made as well. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Tubi got on my radar because AGFA actually they partnered with Tubi a long time ago and said they're going to be our exclusive streaming platform. If you want to watch any of the crazy, bizarre movies that we put out, that's where they're going to be. They're not going to be somewhere else. And so I thought, what? Tubi? Really? I was very not much. I was a little aware, but I didn't really know what it. I mean, I knew it was another place to find movies, but I figured like, oh, it's gonna be one of those garbage things where everything is like VHS dubs.
Right. Right.
But then when AGFA said, yeah, no, this is if you want to watch our wild and crazy stuff like Zombie Ninja and all that stuff, this is the place to find it. Um, and that's how they got on my radar, and that made me think like, well, AGFA is like serious. Like they're
Yeah.
the American Genre Film Archive. Like they are serious about this stuff, and if they're partnering with Tubi, there must be a really compelling reason.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And it is. I mean, one of the things I do feel bad because I know, you know, people outside the U.S. don't have access to Tubi, but it is. I mean, I think one of the things I like about them, one, is that their commercials aren't really that intrusive. I mean, watching CyberTracker on there, they come in here or there. Like some of the streaming services, I think like Pluto, from my experience, or Crackle, they tend to have a lot more. Their commercials tend to be much more frequent, whereas Tubi seems to not be as bad with that. And
no, and their presentation is generally better too. Like
yeah,
Crackle was never great.
yeah,
Tubi's kind, it's a little all over the place. Like CyberTracker is a full screen, and I think it's a standard def dub. It's not a high definition, super great duplication of it. But other films I've watched on there look tremendous. They look
yeah,
great.
yeah.
So
I mean, this looked good, and I mean, I don't know what this because we, like you said, this is CyberTracker was an interesting one because we know that we couldn't figure out why it was Imperial and not PM, and I couldn't get anything on IMDb about that, but I thought for a transfer, I mean, it looked as good as it did. I mean, when I think about watching them on cable, or on
sure, yeah.
whatever.
I guess I'm just spoiled. There's
No,
been
but
there's been so many movies that I've watched on Tubi that I've thought, wow,
yeah.
this looks really good. Like Robot Jocks looks fantastic on Tubi.
Yeah, no, but I thought CyberTracker looked great too. I mean, I think that, I think you're I know what you mean about like some of those other ones don't have the best quality. I think Tubi is pretty solid for this kind of thing, and
I mean,
it's such
certainly
a
for free. My gosh, before you
yes,
before you go out
exactly,
and spend $30 on a Blu-ray,
right,
if it's on Tubi, check it out first and make sure you want to throw that down instead of doing a blind buy. Frankly,
yeah,
the Tubi must have a pretty good royalty system because so many companies are on board with
yeah,
with their stuff. I mean, they just seem to be growing by leaps and bounds, and which is why I mean, it used to be Amazon was the place I would look first to try to
yeah,
find this kind of stuff. Now it's Tubi. It's like, not,
yeah,
it's probably on Tubi.
hmm
And there's all kinds of discoveries just waiting for people. So,
yeah,
and if anybody listening to this has not seen CyberTracker, you definitely should. It's really fun. It's totally, in my opinion, it's as good as like most of what the maybe I wouldn't put it in like necessarily top tier. Like it's not a top 3 p.m. movie,
Yeah.
but it might crack the top 10.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. I mean, I don't know if I have it in my top 10, but I also know, like, again, if I'm putting CyberTracker up against today's movies, yeah, I mean, it would make a top 10 for either the 2000s or the 2010s. I mean, I think that's the thing with the 90s is that you get so much quality in there. And maybe that's a good way we could kind of bring it full circle back, because I think for people that are just kind of getting into this, or people who love this kind of movie and you're just looking for new stuff, I think like Tubi combined with your books, I think is a really great combination for people to, kind of browse through Tubi. I mean, it would take you hours to get through everything on there, because it's just like, I think action alone, I think there's like over, maybe over 1,500 action movies, something like that on there. So it's hard to know everything on there, but I think that's one thing that's cool about, a resource like Tubi now combined with your books, is that people who don't necessarily know if something is worth watching or not. I mean, the other thing too, when people want these temporal refunds, they want their hour and a half back or something like that. I mean, that's the thing too, is you're only investing an hour and a half with these movies. This isn't, Justice League Snyder cut that's 4 hours. I mean, you can
Right.
get almost 3 p.m. Wilson films in for that same period of time. So I
Well, and
think
if
that,
you watch 15 minutes of Cybertracker, if it doesn't grab you, it's not. I mean, they blow up a helicopter 13 minutes in. Like if that's
right,
not enough for you, I don't know what you're looking for. But yeah, you
right,
should probably step off and go watch something else. Like you what you see is what you get, and they are very upfront, and you get it fast in
yeah,
CyberTracker. You get action within 5 minutes of this movie. You do not have to wait 30 minutes for finally something to happen, which is can be the case with a lot of horror movies and a lot of action movies. They take forever to actually get to what you signed up for. CyberTracker doesn't make you wait. You
no,
get it. You get it right up front. As with the best of PM Entertainment, you get it right away. You get what you got. And if you're in after watching 15 minutes of CyberTracker, you're going to enjoy the rest. It doesn't slow down from there. It doesn't suddenly become a different beast. There isn't like a subplot that's presented that totally drags the whole movie down.
right,
If you like the first 15 minutes, you're gonna like the rest, the next hour, like
hmm,
definitely, which
yeah,
is really really remarkable. And yeah, I mean, I hope that my books are helpful, because the films that I'm covering are lesser seen for the most part, and for the longest time were very very hard to find,
yeah.
and they are not, thanks to Tubi and Amazon. To be fair, there's a lot of stuff on Amazon, although I feel like stuff on Amazon comes and goes really fast. Like if you
Yeah.
see something that looks cool on Prime, you better watch it because
Yes.
it goes off Prime fast. So yeah, I mean, I think that could be a very good combination. And my reviews are short. I give you a synopsis and then I tell you like, hey, should you watch this? Should you not? I'm not going to spoil it. I don't like reading spoilers. I don't like spoilers. I'm trying very hard not to spoil the movie. But I'm try to sell you on it or discourage you on it. And I fully admit my flavor may not be your flavor, and that's okay. We're not going to agree on everything, and I think that's normal. Especially when it comes to movies that are fun to watch with your friends. Some are not going to be fun. One thing that I note in my books, if a film has a lot of nudity, or if there's sexual assault, or if there's like animal cruelty, I note that in the review because I have watched stuff, I have read reviews and been like, "Oh, okay, this sounds great," and then I'll watch it with somebody and be like, "Damn, I wish it would have mentioned that was in it."
Yes.
Now I feel like a jerk because I just made somebody watch this thing, and now that like it totally ruined the whole movie for them and like the experience. So I try to note that in my reviews too, because different people have different tolerances, right? Some people want to watch all these goofy movies with their like teenage kids. Maybe you don't want to watch an Andy Sedaris movie with your teenage son. It might be kind of
Right.
awkward, right?
Right.
Or if you're gonna do it in a somewhat more public forum like I did, It's really good to know what you're going into because your audience, your friends may be very mixed.
Yeah.
And that's part of the deal with cult films in general is that me personally, I know that I'm willing to watch things that other people are not. That I'm willing to go a little bit deeper, a little bit darker than other people, but I have my limits too. And so I try to note that in the reviews as well, which again is why CyberTracker is awesome. It's not there's no sleaze. You can watch it with pretty much anybody. It is very violent, but it's violent to a hyperbolic, cartoonish level that cannot be taken seriously. It's not violent and grim and nasty. It's violent and ridiculous. And oh my gosh, did you just see that? We have to rewind that. That's what you get with CyberTracker.
Yeah. No, I think you make a great point. I think it's a good point that you make about maybe PM films in general, is that I think they tend to be safer. I think other than the two Anna Nicole Smith ones, I
Mm-hmm.
don't think there's a lot of really bad stuff. These aren't, like you said, they're not Andy Sidaris. It's not Fred Olen Ray or Jim Wynorski trying to get the sort of the jiggle factor in there. Not that there aren't, scantily clad women, from time to time in these films, but
Sure,
it's
but it never seems lecherous. The
right,
films never seem lecherous and like piggish. They're
right,
not. That's not the audience that they were shooting for. They were shooting for, I think, probably a more conservative audience that liked all the gunplay in canon movies and
yeah,
and that ilk. They weren't shooting for the lonely dad who doesn't want to quite venture into the adult room, so he'll
right.
so he'll he'll get legitimate sleaze instead of getting the hard sleaze. Like that's not, which is what an Andy Sedaris is like clearly trying to sell.
Right.
Um, which is why PM movies are very endearing. They have individually they may not have their own like significant stylish flourishes. Like if I watch 4 or 5 PM movies, I'm not gonna be able. Oh yeah, this is a Richard Pepin movie. Like not necessarily. I'm not necessarily gonna know who directed it, but I'm gonna know it's a PM movie.
Yeah.
They had a template that worked really well for them. They were not films that were like auteur films, but they had a really fun template that should really be explored further by film fans.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you make there. That I think, when we think of PM, we think of a paradigm that works, and we wonder why more filmmakers don't use it. And I understand it's not easy to get like an exact like 90-page script to 90-minute movie, and things happen when the film's being shot. But we think about it. 90 minutes is like almost like I mean, 80 minutes is even better. It's in terms
Yep.
of movie time.
Yep.
Um, 7 minutes, an action scene every 7 minutes. I would settle for 15. 15 is enough for me. If you can get an action scene every 10 to 15 minutes,
Right.
that's how
But they
I
were
went from.
like, nah, let's do 7 minutes. And it makes you wonder, it's like, how did you come up with 7 minutes?
Right, right,
Like that 5 minutes is too much. 10 minutes is too little. We got to do seven. Like
right.
I find that so fascinating that was something, and that does make it a lot easier to write your screenplay because it's like you're basically you got to get from point A to point B really fast because on page 7, page 14, page 21, you're gonna have to have action. Like
Yeah,
like okay, well, what can I have my characters do, and then how? So essentially, that in a way that kind of makes it easier, I guess, because then that those 6 pages have to set up a conflict. You have to push forward on the arc of the entire film, but then you also have to set up a mini conflict. And that mini
yeah,
conflict has to be resolved, has to start and be resolved every 7 minutes.
right.
And so I don't know, maybe that made it easier. I would love to see an interview with the people that wrote the films.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a good point. Like maybe you're right. Like because if you're doing action every 7 minutes, maybe you're only doing like, 5 pages in between. And it does prevent things. I mean, I think of like Ring of Fire 3, where Don the Dragon, he has that relationship with Bobby Phillips, where, I think other films that if they didn't have the PM paradigm that they had to follow, they might have let that love part, that romance thing, get out of control.
Yeah, it would
And
have been boring. It would have been
yeah,
like, what am I watching right now? I thought I was watching Ring of Fire, not a soap opera. You know,
right.
and another thing about Don the Dragon Wilson is that he is like the most unlikely action hero, in my opinion. I like him, but he's not super charismatic. He's not physically imposing. He's seems like he's very average size, average build. He's not particularly tall. He's not particularly charismatic or suave. But he's very much like a Jeep. He's very reliable and he's very watchable. And it's like, oh, it's another Dawn the Dragon Wilson movie. It's like I don't have to steel myself or anything. Like maybe I would for a Steven Seagal where it's like, okay, here we go. Like
Yeah.
let's see what he does this time that makes him so great and wonderful, where like the ego is just like pouring out of the screen. He doesn't have that vibe to him, or Jean-Claude Van Damme, to be fair. I mean,
Hmm.
his charisma seems to be very egocentric as well. Um, he's just more charming, I guess. And then Arnold is the ultimate charmer. He's just as egotistical in his films, or he has that same "I'm so great and wonderful" vibe, but he's so charming. Don the Dragon Wilson doesn't seem to have any of it.
Yeah.
Like he's very unlikely. He's not like it's like him and like Olivier Gruner as well. I like Olivier Gruner. I think he's fun.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
enjoy his movies too, but he's also just not very charismatic. I feel like both of them. The one who's the most charisma vacuum for me though is Jalal Mary. Holy bananas, that guy. That guy has it's like he refuses to emote. Um it's like I find his movies funny because he is so resistant to acting like a human in his movies. Like he doesn't want to have any kind of emotional response. It's like any movie that he did with Cynthia Rothrock, like the Tiger Claws movie, she's doing all the heavy lifting.
Yes. Yes. Oh,
He's
yes.
not he's not doing any of it.
No.
So it may, whatever. I mean, he usually directs his movies, so maybe he's spread too thin. But um,
Right. Right.
Don the
Yeah.
Dragon Wilson is not a guy who you would think would have like what? How many movies does he have to his name? Like 30,
Oh, yeah.
40?
He's got well. So he's got like like 40, and then like a bunch of kind of other things like that you might not like kind of like Hollywood Safari type movies that we probably wouldn't necessarily count. He has 58 credits to his name, but some of
Wow.
the things are like video games. Some of them are like I said, they're like kids movies or things like that that we wouldn't necessarily count in there. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that's interesting is you think of him, Gary Daniels. I mean, you could put Van Damme in that category, but Jerry Trimble's another one, and even maybe Gruner, because Gruner learned savate, in France. I think when he was in the military. But they're all kick fighters. They all come from like a kick fighting background, and I
Hmm.
wonder if there's something about kick fighting or being a kick fighter that I'm sorry, kick fighting. Kickboxing. I'm like using kick fighter, the AIP film term, but kickboxing that lends itself to being exciting on screen because I mean when you see Wilson fight, if you ever watch some of like the footage of his kickboxing matches, he was like. He was like overly aggressive. Like there are people that complained about his style that like he had too much swagger, and he plays a bad guy in New York Chinatown. That's like his first film ever in 1982. Which that one's on YouTube if you haven't seen it before.
I have
Uh,
not. I want to. I want to see him play
yeah,
a bad guy.
yeah, it's really fun, and it's actually I think it might be his best acting performance as the bad guy in New York Chinatown, which might explain something with him that he's probably in real life maybe he's a good guy, and generally like people that are good guys tend to be really good bad guys on screen, but they're not good at being a good guy. Like it's just hard to pull that part off. Um, and I think that might have been what affected him. Is he was always playing this. So he was supposed to play this kind of all shucks nice guy, and that wasn't who he was. He wasn't somebody that like even this character in this movie. He's supposed to be a guy who's like kind of bent out of shape over getting dumped by his wife, and
Hmm.
he's trying to do the right thing with being in the Secret Service and doing everything right. And I mean he has some some edge to him a little bit, but I think he's probably he might have been better. I mean, you want him to be the star of the film, but he might have been Richard Norton's character. He could have been that character, and we just wouldn't know because they Richard Norton didn't have, I guess, the name recognition that Don the Dragon had at that time.
Which is funny because Richard Norton is a physically imposing guy.
Yeah.
He's also an incredible martial artist.
Yeah.
He has a fun accent, and he knows how to. He has a lot of charisma. He's a guy that I really think should have had a bigger career. I love Richard Norton. I am a big fan of his. I think his films are a lot of fun. I think he's great when he's with Cynthia Rothrock. I think that they played off each other really well, and he's a great physical presence in the films. I mean, I never even really think of Don. I mean, I've seen some of his. I saw on YouTube him fighting Gary Daniels like in a kickboxing match, and it was like, this is totally insane. I can't believe that this footage exists and that I can watch Don the Dragon Wilson actually have a kickboxing match against Gary Daniels.
Yeah.
So he totally is 100% legit. Him and Gary Daniels and Richard Norton and Cynthia Rothrock, like all these people were totally legit. And that's actually how they got their career, was like somebody scouted them like, hey, you actually know how to do this. I think you'd look good on camera. I've never really been impressed with his martial arts in any of his movies, really. Like, I can't put my finger on what makes his movies so watchable, but they totally are. Like at this point, I've seen so many of his movies that he's like he's just a familiar. It's his movies are like comfort food. It's like, oh, I'll just watch a Don the Dragon Wilson movie. That'll be fun. I'll enjoy that. That'll be fine.
Yeah. I mean, I have him for all-time DTV stars. I have him third behind Dolph Lundgren and Fred Williamson. I think Don the Dragon Wilson slots in right behind them, and then maybe right above Cynthia Rothrock. I think the only reason why I put him above Cynthia Rothrock is that he has like all of these franchises, like the Blood Fist franchise, Ring of Fire. He kind of has that whereas Rothrock had a couple herself. I mean, she had a few franchises too, but like nothing quite to the level of like the Blood Fist films. So that's why I kind of put him just above Rothrock for third, but. When you think of direct-to-video, especially when we're talking about the golden age, like sort of late 80s into the late 90s, there really wasn't anybody other than maybe like Dolph that you could say that did it better than Wilson at that period.
Oh, sure. I mean, and his movies were reliably good. He didn't have that many movies that you would watch and be like, man, this was a waste of my money. Like his movies, he must have been very good at selecting scripts or something. Because yes, some of the Blood Fist movies suck. Like some of them aren't really great, to be honest with you. But by and large, if you were like his hit to miss ratio is excellent.
Yeah.
For what you're looking for. If you've liked any of his movies. If you've enjoyed any of his movies, his hit to miss ratio is excellent. Whereas someone like Michael Jai White's is like way off.
Yeah,
it's like he's reliable. If you're gonna watch one, you have there's a certain degree of expectation, and his films always they meet it.
Yeah,
he's a very reliable direct. Even Dolph's not reliable. I mean, Dolph did a bunch of dogs too, where it's like, I don't know. This is his filmography is a bit of a minefield. Wilson's movies they rarely hit the high highs, but they also rarely hit the low lows either.
Yeah. Maybe that's a good place to leave this at. I mean, I think CyberTracker might be I don't want to say it's the best example of that because I think it's got more highs than I think it's overall. I think the middle of the film, the action in the middle of the film is a little bit like shootout kind of things where. People aren't getting hit and it's just sort of shooting and stuff. But even that with PM, it's like, you get some of this kind of shooting and nothing's really happening. And then, the guy from General Hospital, I think his character name was Jared. I think his name's like Shane Burton or something like that, the actor. But, he just decides he's going to blow up a propane tank and blow up the CyberTracker. So it's like,
right.
It's like the film starting. Steve Burton, that's his name, Steve Burton. Even when the film looks like it's starting to spin its wheels and it's like excitement by repetition, they just blow something up and bring it back for us.
Right. Yeah. And they, totally. And they kind of know when to trim it too. And they're kind of like, okay, we need to wrap this puppy up. We need to move on to something else because there's other action movies where there's so much action that it becomes boring. It has no substance, and PM rides a very fine line,
Hmm.
where they many times almost go into the, okay, I'm bored now. Like, this
Right.
is like, how many times do I need to see this? They did quite a good job, and this one has more visual style than most of the PM stuff because it's a sci-fi movie,
Yeah.
and I totally recommend it. I think it's a great it's a great movie to check out. Don the Dragon Wilson. It's a great movie to check out PM Entertainment, and it's a great movie to check out Tubi if you haven't.
Yeah, yeah, I think all the same for those. I just remind people too that when you watch this on Tubi, it's not going to say PM Entertainment. It's going to say Imperial. Just know whenever you see that name, Richard Pepin, yeah, you're getting PM. And just know too that if you're getting two car explosions and a helicopter explosion in the first 13 minutes, it's a PM film.
It has to be. There's
Yes.
totally been other movies that I've watched where I've been like, wait a minute, hold on, hold the phone. Is this a PM movie? Because
Right.
there'll just be like ridiculous stuff happening. And then I'll find out, no, it's not a PM movie because right after that initial like beginning inciting incident, it's just like boring for the next like
Right.
45 minutes. And it's like, nah, this isn't a PM movie. There would have been action by now. Like, what a drag. I
Right.
got excited
Exactly.
there for a minute, and now I know I'm in a non PM movie. What a shame.
Right. Yeah. So yeah. Just keep in mind with this one, it is a PM film, even if Tubi tells you it's not. It's still. I think yeah. When you see that PM logo coming at the beginning, you know you're in for a good ride. And so I think people when you're going through Tubi, I think you could probably go through any. But I also want to tell people to get your books on Amazon because I think again with Tubi, I mean they should be buying your books anyway. I think that they're good resources, but I think in particular when we're talking about Tubi, with all the streaming options out there, I think books like yours are a really great resource for people to be able to go in and kind of sort of have some kind of guide for how to navigate these waters where there's so much stuff out there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean between all three books, the awful awesome action, awful awesome horror, and awful awesome sci-fi, I mean you're talking over 300 reviews between those three books. That's a whole lot of movie watching, and I try to run the gamut of films from the 80s up until like today. So there's a pretty wide range. So if you're the type of person who like really doesn't like modern stuff, there's plenty of old stuff in there. And if you're the type of person that, maybe you're younger and you're like, yeah, I don't really want to watch that. Well, there's new stuff in there as well. I try to kind of cover both. I find that cult film fans or whatever you want to call people like us, we tend to either like old stuff or new stuff, and there aren't that many people like you and I that can that are willing to accept both.
Yeah.
Like it's like there's room for both. It's like a lot of horror fans our age they only want to watch stuff from the 80s and that's it.
Yeah.
Like they're like, I'm not even gonna consider like direct to video horror today. Like I'm not even
Right.
gonna go there, right? Which is a shame because there's some crazy stuff happening in the direct to video world for horror and sci-fi and action happening right now. Um, eh, but a lot of people I think are ignoring it. So my book is trying to help encourage you to look at more stuff, to maybe go out of what you're normally used to watching. And I'm hoping to get horror volume 2 done by the fall.
Okay.
And then I'll probably do action volume 2 in early 2022, and then probably finish it off with sci-fi again in the fall. And then I'm currently writing stuff for future volumes as well, although that will take me a very long time. I wouldn't expect volume 3 anytime soon of any of my books, but volume 2 of all of them I'm hoping to release sooner rather than later, because it's so much fun. I mean, really this whole journey was kind of it came out of guilt, to be honest with you. I was watching all this cheesy, fun, disposable, whatever you want to call it, type stuff. And here I went to film school and I thought, gosh, I should really be watching, like Criterion stuff. And here I am just watching all this junk food. And so I thought, well, maybe I can do something productive with it. Maybe I'll review this stuff because nobody's talking about it in the way that I'm talking about it. Nobody's putting it through the lens that I'm viewing it through.
Yeah.
At the time, there's been a few other like So Bad They're Good type books that have come out. But when I started writing, there weren't any. There wasn't a single one. And I'm just trying to add to that conversation, so that, you can, when we can get together with all of our friends again, or if you want to use Twitch or Cast or whatever, you can get together with your friends and watch some stuff and have it be satisfying, right? The last thing you want to do is invite all your friends over, and then what you watched was a total bore, and you're like, I'm so sorry I ruined your Friday night. So my books will hopefully make sure that it's all killer and no duds.
Excellent. Now on Amazon, right? You can get I think if they just I think probably the best way is to look up your name, Jacob Gustafson, Gustafson.
Yeah. Or you can just type in Awful Awesome. They come up now when you just type Awful Awesome, like 2 words, they'll come up.
Oh, perfect.
All 3 of them will come up. And you can get a physical copy, and I also have poster art for every single movie as well. So you can get a physical copy, or you can get it on an ebook version, a Kindle version. And that one's full color, so you can see the poster in color, which is cool. I feel like the poster art is such a big part of enjoying the films or being drawn to them, because that's what we see, right? We're on Tubi and you see that poster and you're like, oh my gosh, that looks like that'll be so much fun. And then, yeah, you're right. You can pull my book off the shelf, flip through it and go, okay, did he review this one? Oh, he did. What did he think? Oh, okay. This one sounds like I would like it. Let's watch.
Yeah. I think that's the way to think of it, because I think nowadays, what I hear from a lot of people when it comes to books is a lot of people are like, I just don't have time, especially people, when they have families, now, a lot of people that, my wife and I, we don't have any kids, but I know a lot of our friends have kids, and they're just like, oh, when do I have time to read a book, with all the things that are happening. But this is different. This is more like having something that you can read cover to cover, but you can also kind of, use it as a guide when you're looking for movies, because everybody watches movies still. So that's still something people do. So yeah, I think this is fantastic. I need to update my link that I have, because I think the link that I have on my site for yours is just for the Awful Awesome Action. So I have to probably update it so it has all of those. But yeah, I think people should go out. I mean, I've got 2 of the 3. I still got to get the sci-fi one. So I'm going to get that one on. I was going to get it on Kindle, but I think I'm going to get the hard copy just because I have the other 2 on hard copy. So I figured I'd just put them all together, have the collection of them right there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the support, and I appreciate you having me on. It's fun to talk about all this goofy stuff. It's rare to get to talk to somebody that is as well versed as you are. You definitely your knowledge is way more vast than I am on the subject of direct to video, but it's just nice to be able to talk to somebody else who can talk shop about Don the Dragon Wilson and Olivier Gruner and like all these people that most people are like, who?
Right.
If you didn't grow up in the 90s, you probably don't know. So it's very nice to be able to talk about it. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you as well. I really appreciate having you on. I think we'll definitely have to plan to get together again, especially when the horror one comes out in the fall. Maybe we'll kind of try to put it on the map to make sure it happens next time. Because it was really great chatting with you. I think I agree. It's always good, especially to be able to have a talk about Don the Dragon Wilson. Not something you can always have with people all the time.
Right, and he should be talked about more. He's quite a treat. And maybe when I get that one out, I can look through and see if I can find something that's actiony and horror-y. Sci-fi and action go much better together than action and horror do. But I'll dig through and see what I can find as I'm doing these books and as I'm putting out the next volumes. They're increasingly deeper cuts. It's kind of like the first volumes. It's like, okay, I got like Samurai Cop, Miami Connection. Volume 2 of the action book is going to have a lot deeper cuts in it, even lesser known films. So as I dig deeper, because I'm putting these out as I'm writing them, so I'm digging deeper and deeper and deeper into this bizarre genre of direct-to-video detritus that most people have completely forgotten or never even knew about. I'm unearthing better and better gems, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's really fantastic. Well, yeah, and so everybody remember the books are awful awesome. I think just go. I did your suggestion. I typed it in and it came right up right away. So yeah, go to Amazon, pick these up. I think you'll really enjoy them. And again, yeah, I think they're really great guide for us as we're kind of navigating this vast streaming universe that we're currently in right now.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for coming on, Justin. I'm sorry, I keep calling you Justin.
People do that all the time. I don't know why. Like my colleagues do it. Like it happens all the time.
It's the Gustafson. It's the Jacob and the Gustafson together. I'm merging them in my head.
It happens all the time. You're not the only one. You're not the first, and you won't be the last.
Yeah, no, I think that's what it is. I'm putting them. It's like just sandwiching the whole thing. We're in this society where we say everything so quickly that it's like my brain wants to put it all together. But no, thank you again, Jacob, for coming on. It was a great conversation.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Hear that? That's the sound of a patient whose health data is protected from a cyber attack. And that's the sound of a financial system that's digitally secured from bad actors. Right now, there's an invisible war being fought on a digital battlefield that impacts what we do every day. That's why at Peraton, we do the can't be done to help protect the vital systems we rely on. Because if we don't, the alternative is unimaginable. Peraton.